Thank you so much for the organizers, but also everyone who came to this morning after the conference dinner. I'm Ferenc Szucs, and this is joint work with Adam Seidel. And this is going to be a paper about mostly about populism and much less climate, but there will be a little bit of climate. I promise you, not much, mostly populism. So we have twofold motivation. The first one is that populists are painting the grim picture of the world, and their ideology often centers around a false narrative. We can call it an alternative reality, which claims that the elite is conspiring against the people and to the detriment of the people. And just to give you an example, which you know probably are expecting by now, is that Donald Trump, for example, he's claiming his narrative is claiming that the 2020 election was stolen by a deep state conspiracy, which involves like government institutions and the media and other elite layers. And these kind of conspiratorial narratives have an effect on how voters are forming their own beliefs. And as you also know, a majority of Republican voters were questioning the legitimacy of the 2020 elections for a very long time, and they still a majority of them believes that it was not conducted in a free and fair fashion. The second motivating fact is that populism is often associated with very low levels of governmental accountability. So although populists are using a narrative which is claiming themselves very pro-people, but still they are running high levels of corruption and implement policies which are widely against the interest of the average voter. And they tend to survive acts which would be extremely detrimental in other conditions. And again, just to give you an example, Trump has been re-elected last year despite multiple indictments and a conviction for felony. And what we do in this paper that we develop a model which has a coherent but false alternative reality where members of the intellectual elite are criticizing a politician based on a commonly accepted important issue, something like competence or the honesty of the politician. If they disagree with the politician in a divisive issue, something like either the distribution preferences, where people have the elite, intellectual elite, and the people have different opinions, or it could also be, and in the case of right-wing populism, it's mostly cultural values, where there is a disagreement between the intellectual elite and the average voter or the median voter. And this alternative reality is chosen and supplied by the politician, and can partially persuade the voter. And once the voter believes in this, or at least entertains the alternative reality, then he engages it with in a Bayesian fashion and argues about the incentives of each players through the lens of this alternative reality, and he's going to distrust elite criticism of the politician. And we believe that it explains a couple of salient facts about politics, but I'm going to be more specific about those. Just let me give you a very quick slide on previous literature. I don't want to spend too much time on this, although all of these papers deserve a lot of credit. So we mostly connect to three main literatures. First, populism and identity politics, and then the supply of misinformation in politics, which is also like a large and relatively old literature, and finally a literature on misspecified learning and narratives. And we believe that our contribution to the combination of these three literatures is that we build a hopefully portable model of alternative realities and our implications to the specific context. We feel that's also like a very essential part of the contribution. So I'm going to show you some implications on the belief formation of voters and also how conspiracy theories emerge endogenously in the model and also how it triggers bad policies by the politician. So
just a quick comment on the literature review. There's some very old work, and I think of Deirdre McCloskey's book called The Rhetoric of Economics, which was talking about these ideas in the 1980s. She kind of had this idea that a lot of what we do in economics is rhetorical, it's not evidence-based, and she has a book on it, but the JEL article is a good way to just go to a JEL article and you can find some.
Okay, no, it's a very good point. We should definitely cite that. So the outline from here is going to be that first I'm going to show you, or at least the setup of the model. So I'm not going to show you the proofs, but I try to highlight the intuitions after giving you the setup of the baseline model. And then we have two applications, which I would like to show you today. And then I draw the conclusions. But before we delve into the setup of the model, let me just give you a few anecdotal stories about what kind of alternative realities we are thinking about. So you should be thinking about, narratives like Trump's narrative that the deep state is attacking him because he protects conservative values, because he's anti-woke. Or in case of Orban in Hungary, he argues that there is a George Soros-backed network of NGOs and media and oppositional politicians who are criticizing him based on being anti-democratic and corrupt, but not because he's anti-democratic or corrupt, but because he's anti-immigration. And a very similar kind of conspiratorial narrative is used by Benjamin Netanyahu, who is arguing that the judiciary and media and opposition and left-wing politicians are colluding to attack him because he's conservative and he's pro-annexation and tough on Palestine. So if these alternative realities are being believed by the voter, that is going to undermine elite criticism. So now let me.
Is what matters like the rationale for the attack? Like often the attack.
Exactly. You need to rationalize somehow what's behind. What is the motivation of the criticism outside of like the legitimate motivation, which would be.
Got it. Yeah.
So the setup of the game is the following. So it's an information transmission game with two senders and two receivers. The two senders are the intellectual elite and incumbent politician. And the intellectual elite is actually like a continuum of similar players. And they do one thing, they receive a signal on the competence of the politician, the common type of the politician, and they report a signal, report a message on this common type, which could either be 0 or 1. Either the politician is bad or good. The incumbent politician might send propaganda, which is changing the voters prior about the nature of reality, and I'm going to be more specific about this, but this is going to change how the people's perception about how the intellectual elite works. And the two receivers are two groups of the voters, which is also a continuum. One part of the electorate is going to be receptive to propaganda, meaning that their priors could be moved by the government's propaganda, and there is a part of the electorate who is not receptive to propaganda. And the key modeling idea is that we have a reality state, which could be either R or AR, and which determines how the elite is going to communicate. And the alternative reality state has an objective probability of 0. So in reality, it doesn't exist. However, if the propaganda reaches the receptive voter is going to entertain the possibility of the alternative reality state. So it's going to put a positive weight on the alternative reality state. And although the alternative...
Interrogate the model a little further then. So is the way you think about it, that these guys are just sort of gullible and they can't help themselves?
Yes, so...
so it's the view that all Trump supporters are stupid rather than that they're calculating in some way. Is that kind of the...
So in the baseline model, we don't really have a demand side for the prior change. But in the appendix, we are working out a motivated reasoning micro-foundation of why people might be changing their prior beliefs. And one potential reason is that if there is a politician who is close to you in ideological dimension, and you hear a bad news about him, it's actually a painful thing to accept. And if someone is offering you a way out of learning something which you don't want to learn, that you might want to sign up for that alternative explanation. This is one potential micro foundation for the demand side. We feel that this is not super satisfying yet, but we feel that this is probably out of the scope of this paper because this is mostly about the supply side. And we are working on the companion projects which are delving more into the demand side.
So I think related to that, one of the puzzling things, at least to me, is that somehow majoritarian logic, that maybe there are 20% of people that are really gullible, but the other 30% you need for the majority, you get from an unholy alliance of people who are instrumentally in favor of the policies that results from this propaganda, and how that coalition is put together. You can think about Boris Johnson in the UK or maybe Orban as well in those terms. And so I would applaud the side that resolve that unsupported.
Yes, no, I agree that the demand side is a very interesting direction to go. And even if here actually in the baseline model, the share of gullible voters are smaller than half, so it's a minority, but still in a probabilistic voting model, that's increasing the chance of winning if you can mislead them and not everyone.
But just following up on that, coming to the wider theme of the conference, I think one of the puzzles is when you look at people who voted for Trump or Brexit or anti-environment, they're doctors and lawyers, a lot of them. They're not the people we would think are incapable of understanding the issue. And we spend all our time puzzling about the downtrodden, but actually there are only a minority of people who are doing the kinds of things we're concerned about. They're not the majority of them. There are often people with secure employment, in good occupations, and you look in the data, you see they're just as willing to vote. Well, not just as willing, but statistically there is a correlation with low education.
No, I completely agree. But that being said, conspiracy theory is not something which is limited to dumb people. It's quite the opposite. So conspiracy theories usually are according to social psychologists, usually are the most gullible people to conspiracy theories are those people who are searching for answers and who are actively thinking about the world. So I don't necessarily believe that the gullible is really mapping to the low-skilled people here.
But isn't it just that if I'm a doctor and I'm anti-diversity, some messenger comes along with anti-diversity, you're like, I like you, so I'm going to support you. And then on top of that, if you feel the elite is suppressing you, whatever, just you're mad. Like it gives you a messenger that you want, so you just go with that. So it's true for all these things. It seems like the conspiracy thing is kind of just dressed up. Like I like what you're saying,
And it helps you to overcome that inconsistency. And that might be very important psychologically that we all, I mean, this is again about the demand side, which we don't talk too much about in this paper. But the way I think about how people are forming their own beliefs is there are two things they do. They would like to believe things that they would like to believe because of their motivated reasoning. But also there are costs of believing that, because if it's inconsistent with evidence, that you feel some cognitive dissonance. And you are going to sign up to explanations to believe that cognitive dissonance. And the conspiracy theory is one way to do it.
Yeah. So not to belabor this too much, but I think really the electoral system has a large play. So your willingness to support this unholy alliance depends on the number of alternatives available. And if the alternative available is very far away, this is Roger Myerson's logic from the 1993 paper on corruption. But if you have PR and entry of parties so that you can find someone else who is closer to you, but is not crazy, then you vote for them and witness PR countries in Europe. You see 20%, maybe 25%. Who are, supporting outright populists, but you don't see 50% of the voters.
Yeah. I mean, that might be one explanation why, the US is more, vulnerable in a way than a country with more proportional election system. Okay, so where were I? Where was I? I think yes. So. And I was saying that the alternative reality state doesn't exist in reality, but it has an effect on reality through the best responses of the voters, and it's also, since the politician and the elite is best responding to the voter, then their strategies are all going to be affected as well. And the alternative reality is different from reality in one important way, is that in reality the elite members are atomistic, so they don't internalize their effect on the election, and they tell the truth because they have reputational concerns, and the benefit, the individual benefit they make by lying to the people is almost zero. However, in the alternative reality, people are being convinced, or some voters are being convinced that the elite can act collectively, so they can internalize this positive externality they are making on each other, and they message to influence the voter. So let me tell you more about the types and their preferences. So the politician has one payoff relevant type, which is a common quality dimension. The politician can be either good or bad in that dimension. If it's zero, then the politician is bad. If it's one, the politician is good. And the elite gets an imperfect signal about this. And the politician is, where should I point to? The politician's objective function is that he's interested in influencing the average voter's perception about his type, and he would like to increase that as much as possible, and he's paying a price for propaganda. And what does the elite do? The elite behaves differently in the reality and in the alternative reality, and we can represent each elite member with a representative elite member, which has a different objective in reality and in alternative reality. In reality, they are just getting paid if they are telling the truth because of the reputational or the lying cost, which could be microfunded by reputational concerns. But in the alternative reality, they do have some interest about the voters' beliefs, and the interests are the opposite of the interest of the politician. So they would like to minimize the perceived quality of the politician. Why? Because they might hate the politician because of some cultural issue, some divisive issue. So the coordinated elite would harm the politician if he can. And the receptive voter is going to have mind types. The normal mind type has correct beliefs about the reality. He knows that the alternative reality state has a zero probability. But if he is reached by propaganda, then the type of the voter changes to persuaded, which puts a positive weight on the alternative reality state. Yes.
About the utility function too. So in the alternative reality, the elite wants to harm any politician and
No, I mean this incumbent politician.
the incumbent politician, right? But, I mean, can you just explain how this connects to the logic of, let's say, Trump or Orban? I mean, what they're saying is that the elite conspires to put some politicians in place, basically the incumbent in place, and they're against a particular type of politician.
Yeah.
Portray themselves as being the type of politician which the elite is against, whereas the incumbent is very much aligned in their narrative with the elite. So how can we think about this in your?
So if a politician is in opposition, yeah, then they say that here in the model the politician is in power. So it's like Trump holding power and Orban holding power. But the model would be exactly the same if they are in opposition, and then the elite just wants to keep the incumbent in power and doesn't want, Trump to take over.
Okay, I would find that formulation a little more intuitive personally, or more in line with the. It would be good to see
But the populist is not in power, or what?
Yeah, and that the elite is conspiring specifically against the anti-incumbent rather than against the incumbent, because to me, that's,
Okay.
it would be nice to see just that it works also. That.
Yeah, maybe we are just too much motivated by Orban. He's in power for ages.
Yes, just clarification for intuition. There's one model where the politicians are the elite, and then you have like an incumbent party and an anti-incumbent party. And there's another model where I think maybe by elite, you have a sense of kind of the media or the newspapers that kind of take a signal from the politician and transmit it to the voters. So this conceptualization of the elite, I think it's more like the latter.
Absolutely, it's
Okay.
completely the latter.
Okay.
So it's here we talk about a very specific form of the elite. It's not political elite and not financial elite. This is intellectual elite. The media, the academia, which observes signals about the quality of the politician and then transmits it to voters. Okay, and I was, yes. So and we also have the unreceptive voter, and the unreceptive voter doesn't change, doesn't react to propaganda. It remains normal. So the timing of the game is the following. Let me check the time. Okay, the timing of the game is the following. The politician observes its type at the beginning and also the state, and then with some smaller than one but large probability, he can send propaganda, and the elite observes the propaganda, the reality state, and the signal on the politician's type, which is correct with a probability pi, which is also, we tend to think about that pi is large, close to one, but not one. And then the elite is sending its message to the voters. All voters observe the elite signal, and the receptive voter is also observing the propaganda. And if the propaganda reaches the receptive voter, then his type is changing from normal to persuaded. And then the voter forms its beliefs. And we could have, another stage where there is an election, which we do in the appendix, but not in the main paper, just to keep it as simple as possible. And
What are the costs of propaganda?
in reality or in the model? In the model, in reality, I think the cost of propaganda is, it could just be like tactical costs. So you have to, print, billboards and drive or capture media outlets as it happens in Hungary. But also it could have some opportunity costs as well. You're not communicating something else which you would like to communicate but you communicate this narrative instead.
In this country, you hire very expensive political consultants who then do focus groups for you at great expense.
Oh yeah, I mean, Orban does the same in Hungary. I know for a fact that he has like spin doctors, which are not cheap. So what is the equilibrium concept? The equilibrium concept is perfect Bayesian equilibrium modified in a way that the receptive voters are using their manipulated prior. So the sequence is that the persuaded voter first change its it changes its prior, then it's reached by the propaganda, and then using this new changed prior, he can do Bayesian update from the propaganda itself as well. And there might be multiple equilibria, but we are focusing our attention on a specific class of equilibria, which we call politician pure and politician optimal equilibrium. It means that the politician cannot have mixed strategies on the propaganda. He can either use propaganda or not use propaganda. And politician optimal means that we are only considering those equilibria which is best for the real politician. Why? Because these are narratives. The equilibria are narratives which are explained to the voter. Why would you explain something to the voter which is not optimal for you? So it's very reasonable to restrict the attention to the equilibria which is optimal for the real the politician in reality. So what is the main result? The main result is that as long as the receptive voters are in minority and the signal of the elite is large, so it's the elite is very but not perfectly informed, then the unique PPO equilibrium, the unique pure and politician optimal equilibrium, in reality, the elite reports common type truthfully, so tells the truth about the politician's competence, and only the bad politician is using propaganda. While in the alternative reality state, the elite reports the politician bad no matter what, even if the politician is competent, and all politicians sense propaganda, even the good type sense propaganda. What is the intuition? The intuition is that in reality, the good politician doesn't send propaganda because he doesn't have any incentive to do so, because the elite, he's expecting the elite to praise him. So he's going to get support from the elite, so he won't take the cost of using propaganda. But the bad politician would have an incentive to use propaganda as long as it's undermining the elite criticism. But it only undermines the elite criticism, it only discredits the elite if it offers an alternative explanation for the elite criticism. And here comes the alternative reality, because in the alternative reality is an alternative explanation for the criticism to come. Because the elite in the AR always criticize, who conspires always criticize the politician, even if it's good. And the politician is always anticipating this criticism, always send propaganda, even the good type politician. So if you partially believe in the alternative reality, that offers you an alternative explanation for the criticism, which doesn't necessarily mean that the politician is bad. And this is how, so our equilibrium notion is a bit similar to subgame perfection, because in the voter needs to think through the optimal strategies, not just in non-equilibrium branches of the game, but also in states which doesn't exist, because he believes that they might exist.
This is very cool, but one interesting set of issues that you're throwing up for us to want to understand is what form this conflict takes. So you might think that historically people were complaining about capitalists and saying, you know, the capitalist system is very unfair, we need more redistribution. Now they're saying, oh, we think migrants are causing some problems, or the green thing is bad. It'd be nice to have a model that at least begins to help us understand why the form in which this propaganda is taking place has seemingly shifted quite a bit in recent times towards these more cultural issues, whereas there used to be more critique of things like inequality, which obviously was the prominent cleavage historically.
No, I agree. That's
I mean, I know it goes beyond what you've done so far, but that's it's like a very important thing to think about how your model can think
I
about those
agree. I agree.
dimensions.
Yeah, I mean the cleavage between the intellectual elite and the voter is just a starting point. We don't explain it. Yeah, but I agree that would be an interesting. I think 10. Okay, that's good. Better than 5. Okay, so there are 2 important implications we believe. The first one is something which I already spelled out, is that populist propaganda deflects criticism. Why? Because it offers an alternative explanation for criticism, and as a result, it increases the average voter's belief about the politician, about the bad politician, when it's used. So it helps populists to stay in power. And the second one is a little bit more, a little bit less trivial and obvious, is that populist propaganda inverts the effect of elite criticism in the eye of the receptive voter. And it comes from the fact that the elite always criticizes the politician in the alternative reality, but only sometimes in reality. So observing elite criticism and propaganda is going to the Bayesian update from observing this combination of signals is going to increase your posterior about the AR, and with it, it's going to increase your posterior about the politician is good. So to put it a little bit more intuitive language, once you believe that that the politician should be if it's really anti-elite and the elite is always criticizing the politician, then observing elite criticism is actually a badge of honor. It's something which is good for the politician and increases it confirms the alternative reality exposed. And if you see a praise, that's actually going against the alternative reality. Yes.
It's a nice intuition. I have a clarifying question to understand this a little better. In the AR state, how is the strategy sustained? Is it that if the elite would see a deviation of politicians towards not sending propaganda, then they wouldn't update about their beliefs of the politicians in the AR state?
So the alternative reality elite would be very happy and just criticize the politician if it doesn't send propaganda. It's even better for them because then no one is going to inflate. So no one is going to believe that they are lying. But that's why we need to have some people who are not believing in propaganda, or that people are not believing perfectly in propaganda, that even if there was propaganda, we need to maintain the incentive for the alternative reality elite to criticize the politician. And why do we need that? Exactly because of this. Because in the eyes of the receptive voter, criticism backfires. So we need to have enough people who are taking elite criticism at face value to keep the incentives of the elite the alternative reality, imaginary alternative reality elite to criticize.
It's a big leap, but could this be kind of a way of thinking about why Trump's gone over after the universities? Because he's trying to make them more critical of him because he can benefit from
part of it.
Criticism by the university.
It is consistent with this result, and this is going. You are anticipating one of the applications we are doing. So we are going to look at government policy after propaganda in the shadow of propaganda, and that's exactly the implication that once you need criticism from the elite, then you try to do things which are triggering that criticism. Yes.
But I guess the Trump case, the mechanism is slightly different in the sense that that criticism from the universities is criticism from the left. And we're in a world where the right loves the criticism from the left, not necessarily because of this R versus AR thing, but because of the effective polarization that Lucy talked about, for example.
Yeah, there could be other reasons, but I think this is also part of the explanation that, in Hungary, I mean, Viktor Orbán always says that, you know, we would like to do things which makes the liberals cry. So it's, they really like to trigger this criticism. Okay, so what does, so what is the, this implication says that that criticism is increasing the voters' posterior about the politician is good, and we believe that this is somewhat in line with evidence from the US. So this is a CBS poll from 2023, and it was asking the question that if Donald Trump is indicted in the matter of handling classified documents, would it make you more or less likely to support him in the primary elections? And it was asked from registered Republicans, and you can see that it's like way more Republicans were saying that they would more likely to support Donald Trump if he's indicted of classifying documents, which is like although it's hypothetical behavior, but it's really pointing to that direction that criticism is increasing their support for him. Let me jump this, and the second part is that observing criticism is not only improving your belief about the politician, but it should also increase your posterior about the alternative reality. And we take a look at that too. So we operationalize the alternative reality as your belief in the stolen election. And this graph is showing the share of Republicans who believe that Biden legitimately won the 2020 elections over time. It started very low in 2020, in January of 2021, then it's gradually increased. And here comes the indictments, and it collapsed again. So people again started to believe that the election was stolen more after the indictments happened, which is again in line with our explanation. It's not only making Trump more attractive to you, but also increases your belief that there is an elite conspiracy against him. Okay, so let me, how much?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So let me just talk about, super briefly about the applications. The first application is about why politicians are using this particular alternative reality. There is a simpler alternative that they could just say that the elite has a very low lying cost. They don't have honor. And the reason why they might be doing this is that there is an advantage of the conspiracy is that it solved this public good problem among the elite members. So if the elite members can internalize the benefit, the external benefit they give to each other, then it gives them a higher powered incentive, so they might be willing to pay higher fabrication cost evidence. So they might show you, very spectacular evidence that Trump is bad, because it makes sense for them because they collect a large collective benefit. So, and the implication is that the more hard evidence presented in the media, the more likely that the politician is going to use conspiracy theory as opposed to just saying that they are a bunch of liars. And this is the result that, if the fabrication cost of the evidence, so the quality of the evidence increases, then you're more likely to have, as opposed to a lying cost propaganda, conspiracy propaganda, or if the number of players, number of elite members are increasing, the region where you have the lying cost propaganda is shrinking because it's harder to motivate a high quality evidence for an elite member who is very atomized. And the second, so one potential consequence of that if we have a conspiracy theory, it might have a spillover to other domains. So if you believe that the elite can conspire to unseat the politician, they might conspire for other reasons which they are interested in. So it can generate some non-belief in scientific consensus, and it's in line with Republicans not believing in climate change and not believing in vaccination. So let me move to the second application, which is exactly what Tim was expecting, is that once the politician is expecting this inversion among core supporters, then he might want to trigger this criticism. So if he can choose between increasing the precision of the elite signal with some policy which is signaling his bad type to the elite, then he's going to do it. And I think this is somewhat in line with what we see that many populist politicians are implementing very poor policies, and these poor policies are not necessarily poor policies which are disproportionately bad for the elite. Some of them are disproportionately bad for voters. And green policies, some of the green policies are good examples. So for example, the Inflation Reduction Act is something in the US which is actually would be generating a lot of jobs in red states, a lot of blue-collar jobs in red states, and still opposed by the Republicans, potentially because they don't want to do, they just want to do something which is against the intellectual elite. And maybe the Canadian carbon pricing, a system of rebates is similar, that it's essentially a transfer to the poor because you get more money than how much you pay if you don't drive too much. And I guess I ran out of time, so yeah, I don't conclude. I just conclude like this. Thank you.